In the humid air of May 1991, a man walked calmly out of an apartment building in Milwaukee. To any casual observer, he was just another resident navigating the mundane rhythms of urban life. But that building at 924 North 25th Street was a tomb. Over 13 years, 17 lives had been extinguished behind its doors. The man wasn't a phantom. He wasn't invisible. In fact, he was noticed, stopped, and questioned by the authorities. And then he was released. He was handed back his freedom by the very systems designed to protect the public. This isn't just a true crime retrospective. This is an autopsy of a systemic collapse. It is the story of what psychology missed, how the law faltered, and how a nation was forced to rewrite its statutes because of the horrors contained within a single Wisconsin address. This is the account of Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, not as a monster in a vacuum, but as a catalyst for a painful American reckoning. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in May 1960 in Milwaukee, a child of the post-war American dream. By all outward appearances, he was ordinary, curious, bright enough, and raised in a modest middle-class household. But the ordinary facade began to crack early. Neighbors and teachers would later describe a boy who, around the age of 6, began to retreat into himself. As his mother's mental health struggles intensified and his parents' marriage dissolved into a battlefield of resentment, young Jeffrey internalized a profound instability. While other children were shielded from the chaos of a breaking home, Dahmer was marinating in it. By his early teens, a disturbing fixation emerged: the internal anatomy of animals. According to later psychiatric testimony, this wasn't rooted in traditional animal cruelty, but in a compulsive, almost desperate need to understand the inside of things. It was a macabre attempt to possess what he could not emotionally connect with. When he graduated high school in 1978, the same year his parents finally divorced, he was left alone in the family home for weeks. In that vacuum of unsupervised isolation, at just 18 years old, Dahmer committed his first murder. The years that followed were a blur of failed starts. A single semester at Ohio State University ended in a dropout. A 2-year stint in the United States Army ended in an honorable discharge, not for violence, but for chronic alcohol abuse. Alcohol had become his primary emotional regulator, a way to numb the escalating impulses that he neither understood nor controlled. He drifted between Milwaukee and Bath, Ohio, a ghost in the machinery of a society that had no way to track a young man showing every red flag of behavioral dysfunction. For decades, criminologists have debated the why of Jeffrey Dahmer. He remains one of the most studied and most misunderstood figures in forensic history. During his 1992 trial, Dahmer was poked and prodded by the world's leading minds. The diagnosis that stuck was a complex overlap, borderline personality disorder intertwined with a severe attachment disorder. He possessed a fundamental inability to form or sustain the emotional bonds that tether a human being to the rest of species. Dr. Frederick Berlin of Johns Hopkins described Dahmer's psyche as an extreme manifestation of paraphilic disorder, where the concepts of control and total possession replace the emotional reciprocity required for healthy relationships. Interestingly, Dr. Robert Hare, the architect of the modern psychopathy checklist, noted that Dahmer was atypical. He didn't fit the classic, cold-blooded psychopath mold. He expressed genuine remorse. He cooperated fully with the police. He wept during testimony. This created a legal paradox. Can a person understand that their actions are wrong in a moral sense, yet still be psychologically unable to stop themselves? The jury eventually answered yes to the sanity question, but the academic debate sparked by this case continues to influence how courts evaluate the insanity defense today. There is a chapter of this story that many documentaries gloss over, yet it is arguably the most important. It is the story of Konarak Synthesumphone. In May 1991, 2 months before Dahmer's eventual arrest, 14-year-old Konarak was found wandering the street, naked and disoriented, near Dahmer's apartment. 3 local women, Glenda Cleveland, Sandra Smith, and Nicole Childress, saw the boy and immediately called 911. They stayed with him, sensing something was deeply, lethally wrong. When 2 Milwaukee police officers arrived, Dahmer met them with a calm, practiced lie. He claimed Konarak was his adult domestic partner and that they had simply had a lover's quarrel. Despite the protests of the 3 women, and despite the obvious youth and physical distress of the boy, the officers walked Konarak back into Dahmer's apartment and left him there. Glenda Cleveland continued to call the police for over an hour, pleading with dispatchers to check on the child. Her calls were dismissed. Konarak was murdered that night. This wasn't a failure of police resources. It was a failure of humanity compounded by systemic bias. The witnesses were black, the victim was black, the killer was white. Independent reviews later confirmed this was a critical, preventable missed opportunity. The fallout from this single night forced a national conversation on implicit bias in policing and the life and death importance of witness credibility. The end finally came on July 22, 1991. Tracy Edwards, a man who had been lured to the apartment, managed to escape and flag down a patrol car. He led them back to the building. Inside, the officers found a house of horrors that defied description. Dahmer didn't fight. He didn't deny anything. In fact, his cooperation was chilling. Over weeks of recorded interrogations, he provided methodical accounts of 17 homicides. His tone was described by investigators as flat and precise, like a man reciting a grocery list. His confession allowed the police to close 17 missing persons cases, giving a hollow but necessary closure to families who had spent years in the dark. But it also exposed the gaps. Dahmer had a prior conviction in 1988 for which he was on probation, a detail that should have triggered a deeper look, but never did. The 1992 trial was a media circus, but at its heart, it was a philosophical battle. The defense argued that Dahmer's paraphilia was so severe it constituted a mental disease. The prosecution argued that his ability to hold a job, pay rent, and meticulously cover his tracks proved he was legally sane. After 15 days of grueling testimony, the jury deliberated for 10 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts. Legally sane. Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, 957 years in prison. He would serve less than 3. In 1994, he was killed by a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver. The legal case ended in a prison gym, but the systemic changes were just beginning. The Dahmer case left a permanent, jagged mark on American society. Missing persons tracking. The case exposed the total inadequacy of tracking missing adults. It accelerated the development of the 6 national systems, which had been chronically underfunded. Police reform. The Milwaukee Police Department was forced to implement mandatory bias awareness training and overhaul its 911 dispatch protocols. These changes became a blueprint for departments nationwide. Forensic psychology. The guilty but mentally ill standard, now used in over 20 states, was heavily influenced by the legal debates seen in this courtroom. It sought a middle ground between total exoneration and ignoring mental health entirely. Victim advocacy. The families of the victims became a powerful political force. Their lobbying contributed to the groundwork for Kristen's Act, 1999, and the Call to Advance Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, CARA. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer isn't a story that ends with a verdict. It is a story about the cost of silence and the danger of procedure over human instinct. 17 families waited years for answers the system was too broken to provide. What changed wasn't just a handful of laws, but a slow, painful reckoning with how we identify those in crisis and how we protect our most vulnerable communities. The questions raised in that Milwaukee courtroom in 1992 are still being asked today. They are in our textbooks, our police modules, and our legislation. We study the darkness not to dwell in it, but to ensure the light never fails so completely again.